Hello, everyone, and welcome to our AWS series. In today's topic, we're going to talk about Amazon's another pretty cool stuff is the Amazon's or OpsWorks. So a lot of you are already familiar, that we got a lot of automation tools out there to manage the configuration management and they do some automation. So hopefully you guys are familiar something like Puppet, Chef, Ansible. These seems to be pretty popular out there in community. A lot of people has been using Puppet, some are using Chef, and some are using Ansible. Personally, I have spent quite a lot of time with Puppet and Ansible versus Chef, though I find Chef to be again pretty interesting. But again, in my environment, I've pretty dominated with the Puppet and the Ansible. A little bit of some time, working with the Chef. So hopefully you remember these automation tools and management configuration management tools basically. So that's the whole idea with the OpsWorks. So Amazon's OpsWorks is a configuration management service that helps you configure and operate applications of all shapes and size using Chef. So you on the back end, AWS is providing you Chef server, Chef client, Chef recipes, cookbooks. You go ahead and select them. There are something already based on that, you can go ahead and configure something. You can go ahead and do the installation. So, like as it says, you can define the application's architecture and the specification of each component, including package installation, like with the package you want to install, software configuration, and resources such as storage and some of the other things. There are quite a good things, as it says, AWS OpsWorks include automation to scale your application based on time or load and dynamic configuration. On the back end, it's using Chef. So hopefully you are getting some sense out of this. Let's scroll through this before we talk. Let me just give you a little some more detail. So basically, Ops works in application management service. That makes it easy for a dev, especially for the DevOps user, to model and manage the entire application. So what do you mean by the entire application? We're talking, starting from instances, your load balancers, your database, you just name it, anything pretty much, whatever is supported here. Start from the template for common technologies. So it support, a lot of common technologies. You can do a Ruby on Rails application. Uh, you can deploy a Node.js application, simple old days, a PHP application, Java, or even you can build something of your own because now you know that it's using Chef, so you can make use of some of the Chef recipes to install software packages and perform any tasks with the help of your own script, basically. OpsWorks can scale your application using automatic load based on time, so it can use the load based or time based scaling and maintain the health. Hopefully you remember that we were done auto scaling. OpsWorks provide something similar kind of stuff where you can scale your infrastructure based on your load or based on that particular time. And again, the good thing, as usual, you have full control of deployment and automation of each component. Again, OpsWorks lets you model the different component of your application. We call them as as a layers, and the complete thing we call as a stack. You can see all resources associated with your application and their status is pretty much on the OpsWorks dashboard. OpsWorks provides an event-driven configuration system with rich deployment tools that basically allows you to efficiently manage your application over their lifetime, including support for customized deployments. You can do some rollback, upgrades, partial deployments, patch management, and so on. Again, OpsWorks support any software that has a scripted installation pretty much, and because, as we said earlier, because OpsWorks uses the Chef framework, we can bring our own recipes and we can make use of them. Now let's look at some of the features and benefit. Again, supports any application as we just talked about. Chef recipes and Bash PowerShell script. You can leverage community-based configurations such as MongoDB, Elasticsearch. And this is configuration as code. OpsWorks lets you define configuration for your entire environment in a format that you can maintain and version like your application source code. You can reproduce the configuration on a new instance and apply the changes and so on. Cool thing, automation to run at scale. You don't have to sit, you can just automate everything. Resource organization. OpsWorks lets you model and visualize your application using concepts such as stacks, layers, and apps. During the demo or lab, I will walk you through stacks, layers, and app. That way you will get more clarity. And again, it support any server pretty much. So you can use Linux, Windows, EC2 instances in your data center or hosted on AWS. So hopefully you get the idea. You can host multi-tier web application, support continuous integration. So you can use with your something like if you have Jenkins installed for your continuous integration, you can integrate that with your OpsWorks basically. So guys, hopefully you got a basic idea about the OpsWorks. So as I said earlier, we'll be creating stack layers and some of the apps. So before we do that, let's go back and log into our management console. And under the management console, we are looking for OpsWorks. So you can see the OpsWorks is under management tool. It says automate operations with Chef. That's the whole idea, guys. If you are familiar with any of the automation or configuration management tool, either Puppet or Ansible, that will make, if you haven't never worked with Chef, but you still be able to figure out a lot of things easily here. So let's go ahead and click on OpsWorks here. And as it says, welcome to OpsWorks is a configuration management service that helps you build and operate highly dynamic application and propagates changes instantly. Start fresh, register existing instances. And OpsWorks now supports Chef 12 for Linux, and these are some of the information. Agent 11.10 OpsWorks agent here, guys. Now, what we're going to do, we'll go ahead and add our first stack. So let's go ahead and create an AWS OpsWorks stack to model your application. So let's just go ahead and create a stack, guys. So click on add your stack. And it says you can create a sample stack that will use the Chef 12 on the back end with, like it says, node.js as your application, 12 stack, Chef 11 stack. For our demo or for our lab, we'll be using a Chef 11 stack. Use built-in cookbooks for applications and deployments, guys. So depending on the version, you can go ahead. It gives you some information. It says create a stack with instance that run Linux and Chef 11.4 and 11.10. Classic experience and some of the other information. So just go ahead and call this is my stack. Let's say my lab stack. Again, you pretty much, I'm sure you're familiar region or what region you want to spin this up and some of the other information, guys. And if we want to do an SSH, we can again use some existing keys or some of those things out. But for our lab purpose, there is no need, and we will not be doing an SSH to our stack or our servers. So we'll go ahead and select that, and we'll leave Virginia default operating system. We are using Amazon Linux. Chef version 11.10, 4 is being deprecated. I use custom chef books, not right now. You can assign some colors to your stack. So I'm just going to pick maybe this color. And there are some more advanced options. Default root device. Do you want an instance store, mFederal versus EBS backed IAM role? We are saying go ahead and create some new IAM role. We can go ahead and configure some custom stuff. OpsWorks agent version 3.4.3.4. You can look at that. There are different versions here. And use OpsWorks security group. So we are enabling it to yes. Choose whether to use OpsWorks security group or not. And that's all pretty much in this one. So far I have selected my Chef version, and I gave a name, and I specified some of basic information here. Just go ahead and click add a stack. As it says, OpsWorks is creating new IAM role. The process may take a few minutes, guys, and it's done. So now we have a stack configured. A stack represents, guys, what it says. A stack represents a collection of EC2 instance and related AWS resources that have a common purpose that you want to manage collectively. So EC2 instances and a lot of other things. It says your stack is created. Now the next step is you have to add a layer. A layer is a blueprint for a set of instances. It specifies the instance of resources, installed packages, profile, and security group. If it doesn't make sense, don't worry. I will go ahead and add a layer, and that will start making more sense for you. So now just go ahead and simply click on add a layer here, or just go ahead and click on add a layer. So within this stack, we are adding our first layer, guys. Okay. So let's go ahead and click add layer. So when you add a layer, there are different. There is OpsWorks the layer type. So you can go ahead and select the type of the layer that you want. Just think of the application that we want to deploy here. So you can have a load balancer at your proxy based. You can have different app server, a static web server, Rail, Ruby on Rails application, PHP, Node.js, Java, AWS Flow. You can have MySQL and some of the other stuff. So for this demo, we are creating a PHP based lab. So we'll go ahead and select a PHP app server. The PHP application server layer is a blueprint for instance that launches an PHP application server. So hopefully you get the idea, guys, behind layer. So we are just specifying, or we are telling AWS or our OpsWorks to launch a server that can host or that can support our PHP application. So just think of that, it's going to spin up an instance, and it will go ahead and make sure that I have all the PHP libraries, so I can go ahead and start hosting my stuff out there. Before I click add, let's go ECS. So you can have an ECS cluster also, ECS cluster layer, a register cluster with the EC2 container services. So it talks about the containers, something like Docker. So you can have a cluster of your EC2 containers, and on top of that, you can run your Docker instances, RDS. You can add a layer of your RDS, or something like you can use the following database. It says MySQL or Postgres. You can add this as a layer. Let's say you have an application that need a database. You can go ahead and make use of your existing RDS instances, or you can probably go ahead and create a new one. So let's go ahead and add our first layer. So we'll go ahead and select layer type being PHP. Once you select the layer type of PHP, there is an option, select a load balancer, create a new load balancer. So right now we are not, will not be using, I will share that later. So we're just starting, and just simply go ahead and click on add a layer, guys. Okay, so hopefully you get the idea. So now as you can see that I have added a layer. Okay, so if you want to look, we can go back to setting, you will get to see the same settings. Okay, I want you to look at recipes, guys, and if you recall, this is nothing but you're calling some of the chef recipes to do some stuff. And as you can see, we have defined 18 built-in chef recipes for your layer. Okay, so there are different stuff. So 8. So in the setup, there are 8 recipes, and also what it's doing. OpsWorks initial setup, SS is going to set up the SSH host keys. User is going to install a MySQL client, a dependency, EBS, Ganglia client, and most important, you can see the mode PHP Apache 2. So we'll have Apache 2 server with a module for our PHP support, and then it's going to go ahead and configure the Ganglia client, SSH user, MySQL client, agent version, and then it's going to configure the PHP. It's going to go ahead and deploy default stuff and PHP. Undeploy, this is what, and if you want to see more details of what do I mean the deploy thing, go ahead and click on deploy PHP. We'll give you some more details here, guys, what exactly it's doing. So as you can see, this is nothing but our file written, some of the information, what it's going to do, and some more details. Hopefully you get the idea. So on the back end, it's making use of all of these chef recipes. And as you can see, if you want to use custom chef recipes, you need to configure cookbook first. So we can go ahead and configure. So you can go ahead and click on that one, and you can go ahead and specify some of the other stuff pretty much. Okay, I'm not doing that right now, custom. So let's go back. We can click on the layers, and this is our layers. Network right now, no load balancing, public IP errors, yes, no elastic IP for our this app server that we're going to launch. EBS volume, we haven't specified anything here. Security, these are the default security stuff it's using. Easy to instance profile, use default stack profile. You can go ahead and create a new one. Everything looks good. Let's go back to our layer. So we have just so far I have added a layer, but based on this layer, we have not launched any server or our app server or an instance. Okay, so now just simply go ahead and click on add instance. So now when it says instance, An instance represents a server, okay? And I'm sure you guys got the idea so far what this is going to do. It can belong to, I'm not going to read this whole. So what is this going to do? This is going to launch an instance based on it's going to launch an instance based on these specs. And on this instance, it's going to apply all of those Ceph recipes that we have defined as a part of our layer. Okay. So this is a new, there's existing OpsWorks. If there's any EC2 instance and on servers, if you have created something, we're going to create a new one, guys. And we're going to call them, let's keep it the PHP hostname size C3 large. You can go ahead and change it. Subnet, and there are some advanced configuration, scaling type, 24 by 7. I will walk you through some of these things, SSH keys, and some of other stuff. I'm not, so keen in making any change here right now. We'll all looks good. So just simply go ahead and click here, add instance. And once you add an instance, okay, now you can see there is an instance, there's a host name, it's in this particular zone, and everything looks good. Now just simply go ahead and start this instance. Unless you start, it's not going to go ahead and deploy. It's not going to create this instance. It's not going to go ahead and deploy all of those Ceph recipes. So hopefully you get the idea. Let's go ahead and simply click start here. And as you can see, it started doing a request. You can go ahead and click on PHP1, and it says the status is out now pending. Pretty much you can get to see monitoring OpsWorks use CloudWatch metrics to provide detailed monitoring for your instance. And if you want to see, let's go back to services quickly. Let's go back to EC2 here. That will take a couple of seconds, and keep it, go to the instances. And as you can see, it started to spin up a C3 large right now. And as you can see, PHP app server, this is from the OpsWorks. So hopefully you get the idea. Let's go back services, and let's go back to our OpsWorks. Okay. So let's click on our stack here. Let's go back to the instances. And right now the instance is booting, and you can see this is the public IP address. Right now it's booting, so it was earlier requested, then pending, booting, then it's going to change to running setup, and then finally online. So this process is going to take, guys, a few minutes before this instance is fully ready, and some of the other things. So what we have done so far, with the help of Layer, we just, we have configured a framework for the type of the server that we want to spin up with the help of that layer. Now, what we do need to do, okay, this server, the instance or this layer that we're booting up, or this instance that we are booting up based on that particular layer, will have a server that is capable of hosting PHP applications. So now we need to go ahead and deploy a PHP application to our stack, basically the name that we gave to my lab stack. So now let's go ahead and click in the apps. As you can see under the stack, we have an option that says apps here. So let's go ahead and click on apps. As it says, an apps represents code stored in repository. So guys, code when you deploy the app, OpsWorks to download the code from repository. So you can use your GitHub repository, or your maybe your local GitHub if you have hosted something, or you can use Amazon's something like Code Deploy if you're using that. So as you can see, there are none. Simply go ahead and click on Add App here. Name, we can call it my PHP app. Okay, and you can see the type PHP here. Document root. So in this case, the data source type, as you can see, the data source is is an associate database server, if any. If you want to connect to any data source, like as I showed you earlier, RDS or anything OpsWorks. In this case, we are not using any database in this application because there is no database that is being used, just a simple application. And then it's asking application source, as we read earlier, is going to go ahead and download from a repository. So let's go ahead and specify a repository where we have our sample PHP application. And let me just go ahead and We have a sample application here at this URL. So we have specified an URL. If there are any repositories SSH keys, we can go ahead and make use of those. And I'll call it, this is my version 1, guys. Okay. Again, if you want to define any environment variable, we can go ahead and add any domain names, again, to host stuff, SSL settings, some of the other things. Everything looks good in our case, so we'll just go ahead and simply click add app here. Okay. And it's loading an app. And as you can see, our app is ready here. There are options that's a deploy, edit, and delete. So now what we need to do, let's go back to in layers quickly. I just wanted to check one thing. Okay, let's look at one of the instance here. Okay, still running setup. Now let's go back to app Stack. So we have just configured this app. Now we need to do a deploy. So guys, think of deploy as nothing. We are downloading the code from our repository here locally. And once that is downloaded locally, we'll go ahead and do the deploy, okay, onto our server. But right now the server is not ready, so we have to kind of wait for the instance to get ready before we can go ahead and do deploy. Because if I try to deploy it right now, see, let's see what happens. Deploy. Okay, and if you see instance, no running instance with the OpsWorks status online, we need to start instance before you can deploy your app. So we really need to wait for our instance to, right now it's running setup, so it'll be any minute. And once that is done, we will go ahead and deploy our application on top of that server. So that means we'll just go ahead and download that application from that URL, and we'll go ahead and deploy that on our PHP server. So that's the whole idea, guys. Here, okay. So give it some few more minutes. Hopefully, we'll be done any minute. Okay. And once everything is done, and if you don't need a stack anymore, you can go back to your apps and just simply go back to your app like this one, and you can go ahead and delete these guys. That's all pretty much. And then you can go back even to your dashboard, and you can go ahead and delete these stacks also if you don't need them anymore. So you can always, I'm sorry, not code deploy. You can go ahead and delete these, but before you delete these, you need to remove the resources which are part of the stack. Otherwise, not going to let you delete that one. Let me just show you. Delete, it says you can't delete my lab stack. Please stop and delete all instances and apps in this first one. So just something to keep in mind. Let's go back. It does says one instance is online. Okay. This instance is online, guys. Now let's go back, and if let's click on this, and it says there is nothing found on this one right now. Okay. So now let's go back and go back to our apps. Now go ahead and click on deploy here. And in the deploy, you can type a comment, version 1 of our PHP app. Again, there are advanced stuff, JSON and all if you want to pass now, but you can see here, it says OpsWorks will run this command on one instance. The assigned recipes are all on selected instance. And you can see it shows you the name here, PHP app server, PHP app 1. That's where it's going to deploy. If you go back to your apps again here, you can add it. In the edit, there is nothing much. We are just downloading that one, and we'll be deploying this on this one. So go ahead and click deploy. And sorry, version 1 of our PHP app, and everything looks good. If you have multiple, you can select which one you want, which one you don't want, that way, and just simply go ahead and click deploy, guys. Will take a few minutes, and once that is done, we will have our PHP application running. So give it a few minutes, guys, here. Okay, well, okay. As you can see, it's a successful. You can look at the logs, and this is our layer. Now let's go back and just refresh this page, guys. Hooray, here we go. So now you can see it's a simple PHP app, and our app is pretty much running. So hopefully you get the idea behind the OpsWorks power, and it's making use of those chef recipes on the back end to deploy some of these things. Now let's go back quickly to the OpsWorks again. I'll show you. Let's go ahead and add one more stack here. We'll go ahead and create an Chef 11 stack again. We can call it uh, demo lab. Maybe let's call it 2. I'm going to leave it some of these things, and let's change the color here to something else. And let's just make sure one pretty quick thing. Okay, I'm in global, so that doesn't matter. What does we are using? Not US East, North Virginia. Okay, so let's go ahead and add a stack here, guys. Okay, that will go ahead and create a stack. I'm sure now you're familiar, so let's go ahead and add our first layer. So part of this demo, we'll go ahead and deploy a Ruby on Rails app here. So we'll go ahead and select a, a Rail app server Ruby version using 2.0.0. Rails stack with Apache and Passenger. If you just want to use Nginx with Unicorn, you can go ahead and change. These are the versions that we are using. And just simply go ahead and add our layer here. So give it a couple of seconds, and if you want to see all the recipes that it's going to deploy, there's a whole lot of list here. Hopefully you get the idea. And once that is done, hopefully now you guys are familiar. The next thing what we need to do, we need to go ahead and add an instance here. So let's go back, click on add an instance. We'll just call it Rail App or Rail App 1. Everything looks good. Just go ahead and click add instance, guys, here. Once that is it's done. Now let's just simply go ahead and start so that we can start spinning up the instances and some of the other things. Uh, that's done. Now, as usual, let's go ahead and click on our apps here. We'll go ahead and add an app here. When we are using an app here, we're using an app. It's Amazon's one of a sample Ruby on Rails app they'll be using for this demo. So we can call it, you can just call it any name pretty much. Mm, OpsWorks. Sorry guys, let's call it. Um, okay, let's call it photo app anyway. Uh, Rest of the setting looks good. We just need to specify the GitHub URL. So let me go ahead and get the GitHub URL here quickly, guys. I'll be using for this one and any SSH keys version. So go ahead and version 1 for this one. I will show you the cool thing about version because we have a 2 version of this app. So right now we will be pulling the version 1. I'll show you that during the demo. Everything looks good. No other change. Everything look. We're not going to make any SSL change or domain name stuff or anything. Just simply go ahead and click on Add App, and it's going through. Now we need to really again wait to see if our instance is ready. So let's go back to instance, guys. It's still booting up before really we can do anything. Now let's go back while this is still booting up to our My Stack lab. Okay, and so with the instances, as you can see, and if you want to add more instance, guys, you can go ahead and add more instance and deploy. You can load balance. There are a few things you can do here. There is a time-based instance. So it says OpsWorks automatic start and stop time-based. If you want to, on a certain time, you want to have more number of instances, you can click on add a time-based instance, guys, and you can specify the Let me just show you. Add instance, and now you can say when do you want this instance to be started, on what day, what time. Let's say I want to start this instance on maybe not every day. Let's say I'm expecting more traffic to be every Saturday. So we can go ahead and select that one, guys. Pretty much Saturday, some of that thing. And hopefully you get the idea. Once that is done, that's all. You can go back and look at your time-based instance. If you want to add more, you can add more, specify different time. Same thing even with the load-based. Automatic start and stop load-based instance in response to CPU memory and applications. So you can add it configuration, add a load-based instance. Again, go ahead and specify the type of your instance that you want to bring up. Click on add instance. And now what it says, load-based instance auto scaling is disabled. 01 is show. You can have a look here. So let's click on edit here. Now scaling configuration on, and we can say, okay, 80%, increase it, decrease it, whatever we wants to, based on layer average. Scaling parameter, how we want to scale, start server in batches of one, stop server in batches of one. How I'm sure you guys are familiar with this cloud watch alarms that we use during our auto scaling lab, and you can go ahead and make use of that one. Just simply go ahead and click save here, guys, and that will be all. Once it detects, okay, we are running 80% of load, we'll go ahead and launch. It will start launching that many number of instances. Hopefully you get the idea behind the time-based and the load-based here. Deployments, it shows the deployment here. You can do again monitoring, resources, elastic IPs, volumes, RDS if there are any, which in this case are none. Permissions, you can look how the permissions look, so who can access the IAM policies and all. That's all pretty much, guys. So let's go back to our demo lab 2. Let's look up, it's still doing is setting up. And let's go ahead and click on this IP address. And there's not much, we're still waiting. Hopefully, let me just go ahead and close this one. We don't need this one anymore. So let's go ahead and close this one. And we're still waiting for our server to be deployed. So I'll give it a few minutes, guys. Hopefully, the instance should be up and running anytime soon. Once that is done, we have already configured our app. We'll go ahead and deploy. Now let's go meanwhile to EC2 just to see what's going on with the EC2 here. Two running instance here. Okay, our demo lab 2. This is for the second one. Our Ruby on Rails app. So still initializing. Okay, let's go back to OpsWorks again. Okay, and it says 1 and 2 are start pretty much. That's what we define. One is time based and one is load based. Let's go back to an instance, guys, and it's still doing is setting up. And if you want to click on Rails app 1, look, it's in the setup phase right now. This is the private IP address, public IP address, some of the security groups. If you want to look at the default security groups and real app security, you can go ahead and click on them and get some more details. And you can look the inbound rules and outbound rules. These are the ports that we are allowing pretty much. So hopefully you get the idea. Okay, and now let's go back to the instances again. We will wait for this to be deployed again on the monitoring side. If you want to see how things are looking, or we can get some more detail about our basic stack here, monitoring. Look at the CPU loads. You can again click in, you guys can change the stuff for 1 hour, how things are looking, and I'm sure you guys are familiar by now with all of these things. Let's go back to our demo lab 2. It's still doing setting up here. So let's give it a couple of more minutes, guys.
Okay guys, our server instance is up. Let's go ahead and re-click on this public IP. Nothing found as usual. Let's go back to our apps and we'll go ahead and do a deploy here. We can call it maybe app without DB. So I'll tell you that this app is designed to make use of a MySQL database. What you have seen so far, we haven't created or defined anywhere MySQL database. So I will show you that a little later. So now let's go ahead and deploy this on our this instance. So go ahead and click on deploy. It should be done anytime soon. You can go ahead and click on Rails app and go back to your instance, go back to the apps, and it's already deployed. So now go ahead and re-click if you want to just refresh this page, guys. Okay, it's still on. So you can see setup, configure, and deploy. Right now it's deploying our app here. So give it a couple of minutes. And like as I was saying that once this is done, this app is designed to make use of an MySQL database. So meanwhile, while this is still deploying, let's go ahead and do some other work. So let's go back to the layers. Remember, we had added a existing layer that spin up server based on the Rail app. Now we will go ahead and add a new layer that will spin up an MySQL server for us. So just simply go ahead and click on MySQL. Uh, Enter the root password. So let's pick a root password that we want to use here. And let me go ahead and I'll use the same this root password, guys. So I'm going to go ahead and make a note of this password quickly, and simply go ahead and click on add layer here. Once the layer is added, again based on this layer, if you want to see what this is going to do, you can again click on recipes and get more details. Now let's go back to your layers here, and based on this layer, we can go ahead and launch an instance. And these are some of the details it shows, and everything looks good. We are not making any change here. Just go ahead and click on add instance, and just go ahead and simply start this instance also. So while this is getting deployed, let's go back to the apps here. Go back to deployment, and as you can see, it's successful. It's done. So now let's go ahead and refresh this page, guys. And here we go. As it says, OpsWorks, the demo app, and this is the app which is returned in the Ruby on Rails. So hopefully you get the idea that it's pretty easy, and you can create multiple layers. Like in this example, we had created a layer based on the Rails app. Now we are created another a layer that where we are launching a MySQL instance. So give it a few minutes, guys, and once the MySQL instance is done, we'll go ahead and make changes to our Ruby on Rails server. Basically, or think of it, we have to make change to our app, so our app can make use of this database that we are just starting up. So while it's doing that, now let's go back to the apps here and go ahead and click on the edit. We'll be editing this app here. So as I said, the URL remains same. So let me just show you on this URL quickly. So there are two versions, guys. Basically there are two different versions. If you click on four branches here, there is a version 1 and there is version 2. So if you click on version 2, now we will be pulling this version and we'll be deploying this version for our demo here. Everything remains same, only on the branch I'm just changing it to the version 2. Rest of the things remains pretty much same. No other thing, but now we will be making use of a database server, and database server, again, a data source. We can have RDS. In this case, we are not using an RDS. We are launching an EC2 instance, and on that, it will be installing MySQL. You could use RDS, and there is no stopping. but for this demo, we are using an EC2 instance. And now say tell the we need to specify the data source type. So our application, when we go ahead and pull this application from version 2, we can go ahead and make use of this database here. So let's go ahead and select the OpsWorks here, and as you can already shows you the database instance name here. Okay, guys, and enter the data in OpsWorks. If you see, the OpsWorks will create the database on your instance. By default, will use the app short name. So I'm not making any change here. Only thing we just said, okay, change it to OpsWorks. Use this one, and we just update to version 2, so it can go ahead and pull a different version of our application that we want to deploy. Just simply go ahead and click save, guys, here, and this is done now. And as you can see, now it says version 2, and it's using a data source, and it will create a database by name photo underscore app. So before we can do anything, now let's go back to our instances, guys, and our DB master is still loading up. Okay, guys, we need to really wait for this to deploy it before we can go ahead and redeploy, or just think or deploy version 2 of our app on apps Rails server. So let me just show you something meanwhile. If you go ahead and click on deploy here, now you are presented with an option that says migrate database. Okay, set migrate yes to, and you can look again. So with this migrated database, uh, so we can check, or we can enable this migrate toggle basically to enable the database migration. So that means this is a built-in functionality offered by our Rails application that lets us programmatically change our database. So we'll go ahead and we need to go ahead and enable this. So that way we'll go ahead and migrate yes to. So we'll go ahead and make use of our MySQL. I'll go ahead and deploy automatically the database, and so the OpsWorks will run this command on one of the two instances. And if you look, this is going to, we have two stacks, or two, sorry, layers, not stack. And it's going to go ahead and run the new changes, or the version 2 of the application on our Rails server. So we need to really wait before we can do. So let's go back to instances and make sure here we need to really wait for our DB instance to be deployed before we can really make use of some stuff, guys. And let me just show you something pretty quick here. So if you go back to your Rails app again, so let's go back to layers here, and you go back to the network, and hopefully you remember the elastic load balancer. So we can configure this elastic load balancer, guys, and we can create multiple of the Rail app server. That way we have a redundancy. So that's the whole idea. We can go ahead and change even to the elastic load balancer. So if you plan to launch multiple instances, you can put those instances behind a load balancer. So go ahead and create a load balancer, and you can use that for your OpsWorks layers. So hopefully you get the idea here of using this particular stuff. And we earlier talked about time-based and load-based. You can do that same. So that's all pretty much, not really anything else, but hopefully you get a good idea behind the power of the OpsWorks. Again, if you are already familiar with like Puppet or Ansible or Ceph, hopefully it makes much more sense to you guys. So let's give it a few more minutes, and then we'll go ahead and redeploy. Okay, and it says the database server is online. We good to go. And if you remember, that was the version 1 of our app. So now we need to go ahead and deploy the version 2. So simply go ahead and click on apps and go ahead and click deploy. Everything looks good. And probably if you want to put app with DB support. And OpsWorks will run this command on two of the two instances. So we'll go ahead and make the needed changes to your Rails app. And at the same time, it will use this MySQL database server to create needed database tables. And we'll go ahead and make use of that one. So everything looks good. Just simply go ahead and click deploy here, guys. And it says deployment. It's deploying. It's running on both. If you want to see more details, go ahead and click to one of the host names. It will give you more details here. And while this is running, if you want, we can go ahead and add some more instance. I will not be adding any more instance. Let's wait for this to get done. If you want to get more details, again, you can go back to Amazon's pretty good official documentation. They have pretty good document out there. You can read through. You can look up some of their basic introduction. Look through different demos. Some of the good documentation out there. You can make use of that one. So now let's go back and let's collect some of these information. Okay, and it says the database server is already done. If you want to see what was done, so go ahead and click on the logs here. And as you can see, it tells you instance layers and some of the other information. And if you guys remember that, it's calling some of the OpsWorks custom cookbooks, which is all your chef thing, loading different cookbooks to do some of the other stuff, removing some of the cookbooks after they are not needed. And pretty much, guys, chef server and complete and that much of stuff. Created some SQL things and all for us. That's all pretty much. You get the idea. And MySQL server was deployed and configured. Now we are waiting for our Rails app server to be up and running. We'll give it a few more minutes, and we'll be done, and we'll be able to launch the new version of our application anytime soon. Let me just refresh. I mean, we're pretty. Let's see if it's already out there or what. No, it's still running. So let's give it a few more minutes, guys, before I can. Okay, and as you can see, it's still running. Okay, here it gets complete also, good. And it is successful. Now this is the version 2 of our application. And as I said, it's making use of the database on the back end. So it stores the images that you upload. So you can upload a test image. And let me just go ahead and do an image here. And I can browse an image locally from my machine here. Let me go ahead and upload a test image, guys. Okay, and go ahead and give it a name. Cloud computing, give a description, and just do a submit here, guys. So what we're doing, this application is making use of the MySQL for storing these images. Everything looks good, and we get to go. If you want to add it, you can go ahead and add it. If not, just simply go back to your application's homepage, and it will show you all the images that you have loaded. That's all pretty much, guys. And I'm sure you got a good idea about the Amazon's OpsWorks. So again, you go under Ops Services, OpsWorks, and you can read through some more documentation and look some of the details. How you can add instances and all that pretty good stuff out there. So hopefully you got to learn something again from this demo on the Amazon's OpsWorks, guys. And if you see that there are a lot of other services, guys, pretty good services that I can just talk you in a few minutes, pretty quick here. A container service that says, run and manage Docker containers. So we'll go ahead and launch an EC2 highly, scalable cluster. And on top of that, you can go ahead and deploy your containers pretty much. Lambda is, it's think of as a programming where you can run code in response to events. So you think of an event like you're uploading a file to S3 bucket and you want to do some stuff. So you can go ahead and make use of the Lambda. There are some good services out there. I'll do some demos on some of the other important things.
but I may not be covering every element out here. Probably will do a demo on Elastic File Service. This is still under preview. So Elastic File Service, nothing but just think of a NAS where you can share this volume between multiple of your EC2 instance, which is something not possible. You can create an EBS volume, but that EBS volume is only you can attach to one instance at any given point of time. Glacier we discussed earlier. You can cheap storage for archival purpose. You can go ahead and do that. You can make use of some storage. I'll see if we will not be able to do a demo on this one, but I'll give you a quick walkthrough in terms of presentation. What is all about storage gateways? So think of storage gateways, guys. You can do two things. You can use the cache based, or you can use a volume. So another similar, if you already got a bigger storage in house, you make use of that one, and then that can asynchronously replicate the data back to Amazon S3. Uh, or you can have only frequently used data cached at local site if you don't have bigger storage, and rest of the data at S3. The only drawback with that design, if you lose internet connectivity, you will not be able to access the data. But with the first design, uh, if you already have a storage, it's good. Otherwise, you don't want to buy a whole bigger storage. And there are other lot of services, guys. Like DynamoDB. It's a no SQL. So maybe I'll do a quick demo and video during some other time, just to walk through some of these different services which are offered by Amazon's web services. So hopefully, guys, again, you got to learn something good. And thank you so much. I'll see you sometime in some other video. Thanks. Bye bye.